Do you separate the individual from the house?
This is the oldest argument that goes with Greek life, and that is, Greek life. Sometimes people say, "Well, that was not the organization. That was just that one young person." Mm-hmm. What we look at is whether I'm not going to. This is totally inappropriate. I'm not going to go into arguing about one particular house or something. That's totally inappropriate. But I would say that what we look at is whether a certain living condition, there are a pattern of issues. And that pattern tends to, if it revolves around activities that normally take place in the building, then that separates it. We clearly distinguish between an individual doing something and something that is more of a group activity.
I would take slight issue with that. I think that there has been, at least when I was in Umoja,
right.
I don't mean to use specific examples, but I know this from personal experience. Yeah. I can't speak for it since I didn't live there.
Right.
But at least in Umoja, there was an instance where there was someone caught breaking the community standards, and the house seemed to have been under watch. It seemed to be the whole entire residence seemed like the program was under threat. That seemed to be the message that we received. For this one,
I can't speak to that because it wasn't that close to that issue in particular. Mm-hmm. But these things often take place over a span of time, and there's usually not one incident unless it's such a radical one. So I can't.
But if you compare, if you were to, if a student gets caught doing the same thing, breaking the same community standard in a dormitory versus a special interest house.
Because then they're individual. See, they're as individual. When you go into special interest groups, you take on a certain responsibility that goes beyond just being an individual student in a residence hall, and that's the issue.
But it is just a residence hall, though. It is just
a residence hall organized around a special.
It's similar to a neighborhood, the new neighborhood model. I don't really see that much of a dramatic difference between the neighborhood model and a special interest house.
Well, I guess we're never going to be clear on this with each other, but as soon as you get a specific house and you organize around the theme of that house, you have a privilege of living in that house because you're connecting to a certain theme. It is very different from simply being a residence.
Is the only difference between a special interest house, which is owned by the school, and obviously so is a dorm, it's just that there's a theme to it?
Yes, you have made the selection. You've applied as a special interest grouping.
But it's the same thing if you apply, or you don't really apply, but in the lottery, you choose your house just like you choose.
Yeah, but it's not. There is a difference. There is a difference between a special interest and maintaining that.
I agree there's a difference between special interest housing and a residence hall, and I think that the special interest house is such a valued part of this school, and I think that's what really makes this
unique. As long as it
unique.
Consistently complies with community standards. And if it doesn't, then it is challenged, and then maybe somebody else organizes. We don't.
I feel like it would be appropriate to use that argument if they were challenging the ideas. If the ideas of that house were not being met. Because that is what is
around
that house.
That's possible.
But also if the diversity house wasn't focusing on diversity, then I would understand the school reviewing its charter and saying you're not living up to the ideas of this house.
Yes, and there are behavioral issues that come into it. There are all sorts of things.
But I guess it's still hard for me to separate the behavioral. If it's the collectivized house, if it's the house that's clearly, the house manager is letting these things go. But I don't want to put all the blame on the house manager because they can only be in one place at one time, and they're not a police force, so to speak, and that is why we have public safety do dorm walks and patrols. But living in factory now, I see public safety walking through, and there has been instances where community standards have been broken in factory, but the idea of factory housing it's not quite.
It's not the same thing. People don't organize in there and say, I'm the factory, and there's some symbol and meaning behind the factory. There's the difference.
I think that each dorm has their own feel.
I can't keep going with this argument. I just tell you the way it is, the way we see it. There is a difference between just signing up to live in the factory. You may subsume a certain culture, but it's not official. You haven't signed up as a group with a certain theme, certain topic, certain set of activities to live in the factory.
Well, I guess we'll have to
agree to disagree. Right.
Yes.
But good pressing. Good pressing. That's right.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. And for the Redouble, I'm Ian Mandel.
Come back to chat.
Will do. Absolutely. Before the end of the semester, I'm going to hold you to that.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.